Well, still another plaque. This from my friends in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because many years ago, I was involved with the group, the Tribute Singers, which was probably one of Nigeria's first a cappella groups in the late 70s, mid 80s to the 90s. And many years after, the group came together and gave me this recognition. These are some of the old technologies that defined computing. In those days, the Amiga, Ava Media, this we used to convert video into images, and where this was what we stored information on. This is what we call the floppy disk. This were before this was what we call the 8-inch drive, and later on came this 5.25-inch drive. This contains about, I think it was 250K of memory, and after some time you could clip the edge and record on both sides, and that gave 512 from 250 meg. So these are the early means by which we stored data. Later on came the 3.5-inch drives. This was stronger. This gave, I think, about 1.4 meg of storage. And I mean, you needed lots of them. So we had cases like this on which you stored many of those disks. This is a typical multimeter that I used when I was a broadcast engineer. I showed you some coins earlier on. These were the mechanisms by which we were able to use those coins to filter, and people can use to play games. You just throw in a coin and the thing works. Here you have a box of what we call slides. No, not slides, but we call them 45 RPM, 45 revolutions per minute records. This in these days, what you call MP. This was a MP3 of those days. This is how we got music played. Typical computers of those days. You have the computer, then you have maybe a disk drive here, a CD drive. This is a 3.5-inch drive. You can mount three of 5.25-inch disks, the type I showed you before here. Typical, we call them tower configuration, and with improvement in technology, we then have monitors like this. These were the kind of monitors that were typical in those days before these came. And there we have more of these tower type systems. This is a very, very special scanner. This is a scanner, because when I started work in human language technology, one of the major problems we had was that we didn't have sufficient data. I was working on Yoruba speech recognition. We didn't have enough data on Yoruba in computer readable form. Talking here, we started this thing around 1985, 86, 87 with my good friend Pastor Luby Johnson and Dr. Sheni Ogunson. And it was important to have data. So we got funding from Bethel Hikma, which is an organization set up by the late Dr. Kole Omotosho. He gave us some money to buy books and buy a scanner to scan the books, and also money to pay to develop an optical character recognizer that could recognize Yoruba text. Another tower system, typical monitor of those days. More tower systems. All these came out of my junkyard. Typical memory cards that we used in those days to extend the memory of computer, when you bought a computer, you were able to extend the memory, and these are typical memory cards, memory extension card. Well, in those days, I'm not supposed to hold it like this without having a static arrestor, but things are still moved on, and these are more relics than anything useful these days. So that's why I'm able to touch. I'm not supposed to touch it that way. More traditional monitors. Now this was a early solar panel that we used for training young people, breadboard electronics, training them to build circuits. And we brought a solar panel with it because we know that we might not be able to have power all the time. Now this Videonics, the company I represented in Nigeria for many years, they made domestic consumer video editing materials, but because of the situation of broadcasting in Nigeria, it was adopted into the broadcast industry and many organizations use them. It's a typical VHS recorder of those days and player. This is the kind of thing that connected to that camera which you needed to support with the camera. Another of the plaques I got from Microsoft for outstanding contribution to the release of Windows 7 and Office 2010 in Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. This is the kit that came with that solar panel, and had a breadboard and components which you can connect. We use this to train young people how to make electronic circuits, long before we had all these software-based digital trainers.